He's listening to jazz.
I'm also a musician, and I know that some of the most respected musicians in my mind are jazz musicians. You know, the intricacy, spending time with, I talk about this in the book, spending time with Quincy Jones, who was from the world of jazz and a former trumpet player and all that stuff. Then he ends up, the year I meet him, he plays for me these tracks, and I don't know what I'm about to listen to. And he says, you hear this? He takes, he slides all the slides down. He says, listen to this. And he plays this thing, ding, 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 ding. I was like, what is that? He says, you ever heard of Sheila E., man? And I said, yeah, the Escovedo family, and I know the family. And he says, she put different amounts of water in little pop bottles, and that's her tinging on those bottles. Then he starts bringing up the pots, and you hear the bass and the drums, and you realize you're listening to stuff from off the wall. And it's just this incredible moment when I realize, yo, he getting ready to bring Michael back in a crazy way. I'm listening to, you got me working day and night, and he just take out everything and just have Michael's voice. And I'd never been in a recording studio, and he's at the board, 18 channel track studio. And then he says, you're from Ohio, right? And he had seen me do stand-up at the Roxy and invited me to his studio. And he says, you're from Ohio, right? And I said, yeah. And so he says, let me play you this, man. And you have to take big, giant reels and put them on this machine. And he put the reels on, and the song starts, and he says, this is a scratch track. And I'm like, what's that? He says, that's a demo. And he says, they want me to find a singer for this. And he plays me James Ingram, Find 100 Ways, and James Ingram, Just Once. Brilliant, beautiful songs. And I'm like, what's wrong with that guy? He says, yeah, I'm thinking about it, man. He's pretty good. And it ends up being the James Ingram from Ohio. And that was an incredible day. But I tell that story to say this great jazz musician had this talent that other producers didn't have because of his music genius. And he was able to bring us the Off the Wall album and put Michael back in the mix.
Yeah, layers and layers to the sound.
Yeah.
That's the thing, when you hear a song, you don't realize like how much shit is going on in the background.
Yeah, Sheila E. with pop bottles.
Yeah, crazy.
I loved that day. That's a favorite time because Michael had been missing, and I had bought the Moving Violation album, so I knew he needed Quincy.
Wow. Yeah, there's some geniuses of music, man. I had Rick Rubin on the podcast. And he's explaining like his creative process, and just like that guy's out there.
Yeah.